So now we come over to the post-process section, and we will cover in this tutorial also the composite section, the target mirror setting, and the ease settings. So let's have a look in the post-process what we can manipulate here. So in general we have this transition with the grid we left before in the last tutorial. So let me reset all of these settings. So now we have a straight transition. Let me go to transform and have a little offset here. Let's say 200 from left to right. It's very basic. And so here we can manipulate a few things that are quite important in the post process. Okay, so one thing which is self-explaining is the tint option. So you can tint your footage over time to a color you can specify here. For example, if you like some bluish color, so you can tint that bluish over time. Hold on here. Okay, and now we have a bluish tint from here to bluish back to the target layer. Okay, so let me do this back. Of course you can manipulate the hue over time. So you got here, manipulate the hue of the clip over time, and of course you can play with the saturation, pump in more color or even less until to black and white. So in the middle we have a straight black and white image. Okay, you can play with the brightness, you can play with the contrast. So these are all settings. They are quite handy to achieve some cool effects during the transition. Okay, the next thing which is very handy is the shake mode. We have a shake mode which is normal. One option is normal, and you have a normal camera shake. So let's get rid of the movement for now to showcase you what happened there. So right now we have just a shaky footage and blending this over. Here we go, some shakiness. Sorry. Some shaky footage. And what you can manipulate also here is the frequency and the amplitude. The amplitude means the way the footage shakes, okay? And the amplitude and the frequency, of course, is the speed of the shaking. So it's more or less a camera shake if you like to, and you can use this quite handy by simply using shake mode normal, and you have the shaky mode. So we have another mode which is called chromatic aberration, and this gives you some glitch effect, which is also quite handy and quite cool. And let me bring this amplitude down to something like let's say 40, which looks cool. And now we got this little shaky glitch transition. Here we go, as you see. And here we go. Yeah, so this is a very cool, handy and fast way to achieve some glitchy effect in a transition. And again here, amplitude and frequency to do so. The next thing will be the blur mode, but let me go to the composite section for now and jump over, because in all tutorials we did before, you have these mirror issues here. And let's go back to the normal camera shake and crank the shake amplitude a little bit up. So in this case, you see the tiling is simply a tiling, and in the composite mode you have the option to clamp your clip. One, you can clamp, which gives you a black background, so it looks like this. Simply the footage is shaking. Okay, and of course we have the option to mirror that. That means reflect, and now you have a reflective thing, which is quite better than having these edges here, especially if you use the chromatic aberration in the glitch version. So let's say 50, and now that looks very cool and very clear also, so you don't have these edges here on the side of your canvas. Okay, so this is to set in the composite mode, the clamp mode, from normal to reflect or to clamp. It's up to you what you like better. Okay. The next thing is the blur mode. So let's get rid of these shaky transition. Let's give him an offset to 200. So we have a movement from left to right, and you see there's no motion blur going on, and that looks not very natural, not very dynamic. For that we have in the post process the blur mode, and you can choose between different blur modes. In our case we'd like to have a motion blur from left to right, so we choose the Gaussian and we just bring the x-axis up to 50. Now we have a very cool motion blur going on over time, and this is the result. So now you have a transition with a perfect motion blur inside the transition. Looks very dynamic, looks very cool, and is very fast. Here we go. Okay. For example, if you have something which you want to rotate, so let's get rid of this and give him a 360-degree rotation. This motion blur in Gaussian not really fits perfect to the movement of the source. For that we have in the post process on the blur mode we have some radial blur, which you can manipulate also in both axes, X and Y. And this is what you get. Now we have a perfect radial motion blur. Fast, easy, and looking cool. And of course you can crank that up if it's not good enough for you, not enough motion blur. You can crank this up and play with the settings. Okay. Here we go. Good. We also, if you, for example, have a zoom, so it means rotating and zooming in. In this case, let's scale that up to 250% in X and 250% in Y. So we have a straight zoom in. We need, of course, a zoom on top of the rotation blur. In the post process, we have therefore the radial plus zoom. This is how it looks like, and this is the effect. Zooming in, radial zoom and radial blur, and here's the transition. Quite easy, quite cool, quite fast. Okay. We have at least a Pixelize mode on top of overall the effects. So this is an effect which is really the last effect, and this is if you combine that, it will sit on top of all of these effects. So if you put that on, you have the option between square, triangle, and hex. And if you go to square, for example, you can pixelize your image, your clip, and this is affecting everything which is beneath this. So also the blur and also the movement. So there's no chance to combine this. So this is the last finish if you like to over time. So, and this looks like this. So we have 50 pixels in left and 50 pixels in right. So this is, or 26 in right. So this is the result. You got some pixeling going on, which could be a cool effect, especially if you have hard zooms and you like to let them look quite sharp in pixels, not this soft pixeling issue that you have if you zoom too much into a software, into a clip, into a footage. So this is useful to give them a smooth finish. You can overdo it if you go here to something like, let's say 10 by 10 pixels. This is not really handy. It looks very strange because it starts from here, then it pixels up and again down. So this is not, for me it's not very cool, but anyway, it's a small effect on top of all the other effects and made it useful for your needs. Okay, so this is the post process. In the composite mode we talked about before in the tutorials, you have the output mode. You can switch between normal, time remap, which gives you the black and white image. You can choose the transition value, so this gives you the value of the transition, how the transition will happen. So here you see black, nothing is affected, white, everything is affected. Okay, and you can have a look at the ease curve, So this is the ease curve already installed and already applied. You got this ease in and ease out, which is standard. And if you stay at the ease curve and let's go to the ease settings, we have here several presets, presetted ease modes. For example, shift in will looks like this. We have a long stay and then shift in. We have a shift in and out, which is transition in, stays, and then transition out. And we have smooth in, smooth out, smooth in and out, bounce out, which gives you this bouncing. So if you like to have that, let's go back to the normal view. You can have a look at here. So this is how it looks like. It will bounce several times. Okay, we go back to the ease curves, and we have of course a bounce in and out. Bounce in, bounce out. Okay, and of course you can manipulate these settings by scale the ease. Here we go. So you have an easy in and bouncing. Looks quite weird, I think. Let's have a look how this looks like in real. So this is the footage. Let's have a look how this will looks like. Here we have the transition. This is quite weird, but you can imagine what you can do with this. So some fancy things, moving and shaking around, and this is where the ease curves are interesting for. So you can manipulate all of this. You have the offset ease, so you can offset that, and you get always the response directly here on the ease curves monitor. Okay. You can bend the ease. So if you don't like the presets, you can play with these settings until they fit to your need. And of course you can reset all of that. And have a look at only the smooth in and out curve. Okay, so this is where the ease settings come in place. So last but not least, the target mirror settings. Here these settings are some predefined settings of the behavior of each transition module. So we have inverted rotation. That means if you have a 360-degree rotation, it turns automatically clockwise. And if you like it the other way around, simply check here the target mirror settings and make sure it's the target mirror settings. So it's not the source mirror settings, but the target mirror settings. So if you like to have a rotation counterclockwise, by unchecking this here, nothing will happen because you have to, it only affected the target settings. So these are not the source mirror settings, these are the target mirror settings to give you some more creative options and some fancy ideas. Okay? Hope you enjoyed our tutorial series. Hope you enjoyed the TransitionMaster. Hope you got a ton of ideas how cool and how many transitions you can build with this and how they can fit inside your project and how you can be special and not mainstream regarding transitions in your cutting software, in your production, in your post-production. Hope you enjoyed our product. Thank you for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Bye.